When I graduated in '61, it was more like it is now. The first 3 years, we were operating off of a split campus. The old campus is where Fresno City College is now, and that was Fresno State's main campus. And then they had this new one way out in the country. And they had to stagger the classes on the hour on one campus and on the half hour on the other campus. And then you had shuttle buses to take you back. It was a 20-minute ride, 10 minutes to get to your class, and you were taking classes on both campuses.
When I first came in 1963, Channel 47 at that time was across the street where the McDonald's is at Cedar and Shaw right now. And they approached the university and radio TV department saying they would be interested if the department wanted to do a live half-hour TV show Monday through Friday. And it was called This Morning in Fresno. And the students were responsible for all aspects of the production. And there was a microwave dish put on top of the roof and signaled over to Channel 47 across the street. And so it was an outstanding experience. And one day you might be talent on camera, the next day you might be the camera person, the next day you might be in this control room right here doing all of those kinds of jobs.
In the early years, it was Merlin Burris. He started the broadcast program on the old campus. I think it was his first job after graduating from UCLA, and he got on the faculty here. He really was the department. One of the speech teachers would help with some of the lecture classes. But Merlin was the technical man, and he was the designer of the studio here.
I took Merlin Burris's cinematography course, and we shot film back in those days, 16 millimeter film. And we'd hang out in the studio and we'd do film tests, and then we'd go out and shoot and bring back our film and have it developed downtown, and then we would edit the next day. And which means in a room we were hanging up film up on the wall and looking at scenes, and then actually physically cutting the film and putting them together. And then we'd have a film festival at the end of every week.
Well, we had everything from large demonstrations, kids parading around the campus, but the kids that were demonstrating came down the hall. One of them stuck their head in and said, "Hey, get out of here now. I want you to leave. We're demonstrating and blah, blah, blah." And so I said, "No, we can't. We got the newspaper to put out here. You want coverage?" The kid looked at me and said, "Oh, continue," and left.
This was a turbulent time. It was the 70s. It was right after Watergate, so there was a lot of journalism majors, a lot of student protests on campus. And the campus had the benefit of two great newspapers. You had the Daily Collegian, because that was what it was called at the time, because it came out 5 days a week.
Then we had daily deadlines. We had to have it down to the printer, as I recall, like 9 o'clock in the morning. So we were up 5 days a week, so we had day editors for each day of the week who were responsible for that edition. An overall editor to make sure stories were assigned out and due on time.
We had the Insight back then, not just the Collegian. The Insight was a class, and it was a weekly publication that a class contributed to. I think it was an upper division class. And so we all had an opportunity to contribute to that publication. So we're getting published as juniors and sophomores. This was right at the advent of desktop publishing. There were really no computers around yet. They were just coming around. And everything was done almost like you saw in the movies. It was typewriter, it was crossing out with the pen and redoing that way.
Another aspect of the radio TV was at that point KFSR radio, which continues to this day. But at that particular time, it was only wired into the 3 dorms that were on campus at that particular time. That was the only people who could hear it.
And I can remember being a program manager for KFSR, and you could go and sit in front of a mic. Still, it was not FM, it was carrier current. Your whole audience were the dorms and maybe the satellite student union, which means you maybe had 1 or 2 people listening to you at any given time.
I did work on KFSR. I helped with the ascertainment study, I think they were trying to, actually broadcast to the community, because when I was at Fresno State, it only broadcast on campus, so not that many people got to hear it. So I worked on helping to get the information and do interviews around the community for that ascertainment study so that they could then begin broadcasting to the community.
When I first transferred over to this department, it was all black and white television. The cameras had the rotating lenses, so if you wanted to tell a photo shot, you had to twist the lens.
I remember my first class, which was a TV class, and we were looking at black and white cameras, and this is 1977, and I don't know much, but the world was in color then, and they had these 3 beautiful color cameras, but we could never touch those. So it was a black and white, and we were doing a newscast, and basically you would be directing the news. You are calling for a lens that's 50 millimeter, 100 millimeter, and they're racking, and putting it in.
When I became a student here in 1974, our studio was black and white. And we got our first color camera, which was a big deal. It was very expensive back then. And so color television was a big deal. And incorporating color in our shots was very important, because we learned how to shoot everything in black and white and gauge tonal values. And then color hit, and that was exciting. That was the wonderful world of color.
When I started at the Collegian, there was very little web content, and it was mostly whatever was in the print edition was going onto the website. And throughout the 3 years that I was there, I got to kind of be a part of driving the multimedia content. So we started to do web-only content and video packages, and partnering with the video students to do that work. And so that was really exciting to just kind of be pioneering all of that at the Collegian at that time. I remember we got to go down south to a kind of a student news awards show, and the Collegian's website won like first place nationally, and I can't remember what it was called, but they're like, this is the Pulitzer Prize for student news, for student newspapers. And so to have the website go from what it was when I first came to where it was when I left, and to receive that recognition was pretty amazing and inspiring as a student.
Our class was basically hired to be the salespeople for ad space in the Collegian. So we had to cold call kind of on our own time. We made money doing it, which was really cool. You had office hours, so you had to be in the office, but you work as hard as you wanted to. You had like a minimum that you had to meet, but the class that I had, we all were really motivated to really excel.
The advertising campaigns class, which was absolutely one of my favorites. That year in 1989, we won the regional competition, went on to Washington, D.C. and competed nationally. The experience and the information I learned just hands-on on putting campaigns together, communicating, presenting, getting up in front of people.
Honestly, that was the closest thing to real life working in an advertising agency. The deadlines, the pressure, the creativity. Back then, it was before we were just starting to work on Mac computers, doing graphics, but we had to hand paint all of our visuals, take photos, and create slides. So there were 2 or 3 nights where I was working with another partner, and we were painting all of the visuals for our TV storyboards.
So my favorite course was Talk, which was Betsy Hayes' student-run PR firm. It was really fun and exciting to learn about agency life a little bit before I actually started working at an agency.
I was one of the senior account managers, and again, it was that real-world experience while still on campus. And you take it and you run with it, because it becomes more than just a club. You're actually working with, at the time we were working with actual businesses that were allowing, you think me, this lowly little undergraduate student, you're allowing me to say, what you can and can't do for your business.
I took an editorial writing class from Greg Wooliger, And that was a fascinating class. Still remember some of the things he taught us. And of course, you know, being around the legendary Roger Tatarian, former editor-in-chief of UPI, as your instructor, and as of course he taught on the press and world affairs, and that changed my attitude and perspective on a lot of things. You ask anybody who went through that department in the late 70s and they'll say Roger Tatarian was the biggest influence on my life, and I agree. He could tear your story apart and make you 2 feet tall and then build it back up and make you 7 feet tall. Master of words, nicest man in the world, most humblest man in the world, who knew just about everybody at the time. I mean, he's the contemporaries of Walter Cronkite and some of the great newsmen of that era.
My favorite class was when I was able to get into MCJ 128. It's everything hands-on that we got to learn and experience. We got to use the cameras, we got to learn about how to put on a newscast, how to work inside the control room. So that was kind of where it kind of started for me.
When it came to doing our studio classes, our projects, our film projects, or when we did our newscast, or the global news relay, we were always just a family trying to get work done. And I can remember so many nights that we were in there in the editing rooms till about 10, 11 p.m. and then someone would call up, hey, you want some food? You want something? Like, can I help you anyway so you can get your project done?
My fondest memories are with my MCJ family, with Faith when we first got Global News Relay. She was so happy that we were hosting it. We were so ecstatic, so nervous to put on that show for the millions of people to watch it from the 26 or 27 universities, including us, having to put on that show. We were lucky enough to host it for the first time. And I remember staying at campus from 8 in the morning to maybe 1 or 12 o'clock at night.
Speech Arts 150 was the hub of the MCJ department. There were editing stations, there were equipment checkouts.
So 150, you know, was student run, you know, completely. It was, you walked in and this was the hangout for all students media. If you couldn't find us, we're probably in 150. We'd work together. So many projects got shot in that room, edited, late nights, early mornings.
And that was sort of the office that students would go into and to just jump on a computer and kind of have that collaborative environment with other students. And all at the same time, there'd be student assistants working across the way. You'd be like, hey, I've got this question about editing that I need to have answered. And they were always very helpful in that sense. And I'm glad that I eventually got to that point and I became a student assistant myself.
There was a couch in the office, and in between classes I would eat a snack and hang out with the other MCJ students while they were either working on projects or waiting for their next class, spitballing ideas on projects with other students, and yeah, just kind of just, it was a nice place to be and feel the vibe of everything that's going on with the other MCJ students.
I remember taking one media law class with Faith Sidlow, and first of all, Faith was just a bright, awesome, just exciting professor to take a class from. And then the content was challenging and technical, and we're learning about this different aspect of media and why things are on the news, why they can be, why they can't be, and what are all the rules that go into broadcast TV. And I think after that, I was hooked.
But you know, what has it been, 90 years? This department, from the time it started to today, has been chronicling the lives of the campus and the community and the people in the San Joaquin Valley. I mean, it's been a huge part of that, and I think that you know, it's wonderful to be part of a department that embraces its students and its faculty in a way that these experiences will not be forgotten by the students who come through here. I believe that very much.